Some
Check,
nights
check.
it's been pretty literal. It's not me.
Flat screens up here.
Check, 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 check.
Everybody's like that.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to begin this evening's special board meeting. The special board meeting of May 12, 2015 is now called to order. The time is 6:00 p.m. At this time, we request that all electronic devices be turned off or put in a silent mode. We would like to take this opportunity to remind members of the public of the district's mission, which is to ensure that each student reaches his or her highest personal potential and the district's vision to be a world-class school system. This evening's agenda includes public comment and one item under superintendent's recommendations. Board members, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. La Riviere, seconded by Ms. Fisher. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Martin, please address the agenda item of public comment.
School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda or any other matter relevant to the operation of the school district. If you completed a card and submitted that to me before the meeting began, you'll be called in the order of the card submitted. If you did not submit a card but still wish to address the school board this evening, the school board chair, Ms. Morgan, will give you an opportunity in a moment to express that desire. The rules concerning public comment to the board are posted at the back of the room and include the requirement that any speaker wishes to address the board to endorse the purchase of a product or a service. The speaker must reveal that interest before making comment to the board. The school board does not respond during public comment time to remarks made by speakers. At the conclusion of public comment time, the school board chair may address concerns raised by speakers or may assign responsibility to the superintendent to do so. The time allowed per speaker is 3 minutes. If we have over 20 speakers, it would then be 2 minutes. Ms. Morgan, I have 11 cards this evening.
Is there anyone on the left side of the auditorium who hasn't filled out a card who wishes to speak? Please state your name. Is that a P or an F? Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Anybody on the right side who wishes to address, who has not filled out a blue card? Thank you. That's 4. But you can just give me your name. Okay, Mr. Martin, please call the first card.
First speaker is Mr. Don Armstrong.
My name is Don Armstrong, former school board member, as most of you know, but proud parent of 2 fourth graders that go to this school district. I'm also a product of Lee County School District. As I sat on that board for 4 years, this is not the first time this has been brought to us. I disagreed with it then, and I disagree with it today. I have several reasons I should say that I disagree with it. After I heard about it, I watched the meeting today. I took the opportunity and went to different business leaders that I know, and I brought the idea to them. They wasn't in favor of it, none of them. Matter of fact, some of them didn't even know about this meeting tonight, else they would have shown up with their employees. They were disheartened. But you guys are not looking at the whole picture either. It's a half-cent sales tax. Yeah, we do need it, but we're also hurting our district employees because that's going to be affecting them as well. They've already been hit by 3%. Now we're going to hit them with a half cent. You know, some of these employees are working their rear ends off. We have some of the best district employees. I can't foresee right now is the best time to do this to them. They do an outstanding job, and they deserve that respect. We do need new schools, and I know the money is running low. I've talked to several of the board members up there about their concerns, but you have to start looking at different ways. We need to go out as a district and start doing surveys and find out exactly if this is going to pass. Instead of spending $1.2 million to do a survey, that's a little ridiculous. I mean, my kids are going to have to pay for this half-cent sales tax. Let me tell you what, they only get $10 a week for allowance. Yeah, I'm a cheap daddy, sorry. They only have to do laundry and do their homework. But we're going to affect our students, our employees, some of the lower income families. This will hurt. This will hurt our community. This will hurt our business leaders because they will have to start raising their prices. So I urge you to take a long look at what you're getting ready to do. And if you're going to do it the right way. Go out to the community leaders. Because I've had the opportunity to talk to some of our county commissioners, and I haven't yet to find one that's really in favor of this either. So I think I applaud you to do your due diligence and table this for the time being and start looking up to another plan, what we can do to help this district. We do need it, but I think we're going to push and rush, and we potentially could waste $1.2 million. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Mr. Kevin Regal. You'd like to waive his comment? Next speaker is Ms. Ramey Hall.
Again, thank you for allowing me to speak. I would just like to commend the board for what you did in the last meeting where you voted to not count the 30% as part of our students' final grade. I think that was an excellent decision. However, I did find out after that kids are still required to pass those EOCs in order to be moved to the next level. And so I feel like we have some loose ends there. I also found out that teachers are also held accountable for how the students did on the EOCs. So I know after my daughter took the algebra EOC and just told me how impossible it was. She said there were 20 questions that were just out of left field. Again, she's an A student. I know I took it that night immediately. I wrote her math teacher a raving review and asked the principal that be put in his public record to be used for review, because I don't think it's fair that her math teacher, who has been wonderful this year, would have her performance on that EOC be used to evaluate him. And I don't think parents are very well educated that teachers are being evaluated on that, and I don't know that as many parents would write recommendations like I did, so I think that's sad that that could be held against our teachers. I've also talked with a number of high school students that took the EOCs in different subjects, and I'm talking top level students in our schools said the EOCs were impossible. So I'm really hoping that we're going to take a long look at this for next year and make some changes. I know students are relieved that it didn't count this year, but they're already worried about next year. I also want to point out that the entire fourth quarter has been essentially wasted in our public schools, in elementary schools, middle, and high schools due to testing. And I think that's really sad. I think our kids deserve better. So thank you guys for letting me speak.
Next speaker is Ms. Lori Fahey.
Hello, I'm Lori Fahey, And again, I just wanted to mention on the half-penny tax that we still need to have a briefing to cover the testing and the computer use. Some of these computers are being used strictly for testing, and they have no other purpose. And I believe that we need to ask the community and see whether the half-penny tax is something they would support before we spend the money. I know that the 1.2 million is basically just one day's expense in our school district, but every penny saved helps us along our way. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ms. Melissa Giovanelli.
I just want to thank the board for responding to my letter that I sent over the weekend regarding Kevin Riegel. The situation at Lehigh Senior High and those students and athletes were affected. I wanted to bring to your attention, as we seem to have come to an impasse regarding the resolution of these things and that he brought forward and the most of what the board has validated. I know most of you felt that the superintendent would make this right, and I am here to tell you otherwise, as I was privy to all the meetings between the two parties, as well as the individual board meetings with him. Individual board meetings that was with him. Thank you for those that met with him and taking the time to understand the situation and getting your minds wrapped around it. I would also like to remind everyone that it was never about Mr. Riegel, but it was always about the kids who were harmed in several different situations. Please don't let anyone let you think otherwise, as this clearly is not true. The superintendent is quite content on doing nothing, as she feels too much time has passed for these situations. I would like to point out that Mr. Riegel brought this information up for over a year to the board and to her, while she sat idly and did not respond nor take any definite action. She claims she has listened, but as Mr. Riegel has pointed out, listening is not taking action, but her actions swept this under the rug to protect her friends. To compound matters, when she states that she has not seen the need to inform the families involved who were harmed in these matters, and as too much time has passed, she implicates herself. Don't forget, an email back in December 2012 was sent and responded, and never acted upon by Dr. Greg Atkins. As a parent with a child in the system, I feel if illegal activities has happened to children and there is no statute of limitations for that wrongdoing, harm was done. Our legal system is basically the same way, so I don't think I am the only one in the country that feels this way. I have spoken with others in the community, and they feel the same way I feel. If any of these things had involved my child, you would be talking to my family's attorney. Things needed to be made right by these kids, and this did not happen, and others, or that it did not happen again in the future, so that does not happen again in the future. I could not believe that the Superintendent Graham spent part of one meeting actually defending Dr. Spiro and his actions and his baggage, as she called it, instead of dealing with all the important issues. That is the problem here. She clearly protects her friends and administrators to commit wrongdoing over the value of protecting the welfare and education of these students and families and staff that she oversees and serves. Why is this allowed by the school board? This cannot be tolerated under any
Ms.
circumstances.
Giovanelli, your time is up, ma'am. Next speaker is Ms. Sierra Susco.
Tonight my name is Dagny Taggart, and I represent all the John Galts, the students who can't be here and who are unable to voice their vote due to age. If you pass this tax, it won't affect you as much as it'll affect my generation. Some people will say that tonight's vote will just place this issue on the ballot and we can voice our opinion during the vote, but I can't. We children can't because we are not eligible to vote due to our age. Yet we are the ones who will be most affected by this because this half cent represents the greater burden of our smaller income. I'm speaking for those young from high school to pre-K who receive birthday money, babysitting checks, or my brother, who works as an actor and gets cash from that. I earn a commission for my work, and when me and my brother want something, art supplies, a new shirt, hygiene products, even junk food, we have to pay for that out of pocket. This half-cent tax is a very big deal to us. Before you ask for more money, you need to ask yourselves whether you are being good stewards of the money you are already allocated. More is being spent to meet your government expectations and completing paperwork tasks to prove the value of your existence than on actually teaching the students. The 10th Amendment says that any power not given to the government is retained by the state and the people. We have the power. You're giving it away to the government. Take it back. Yes, good school buildings are beneficial, but without decent teachers who are allowed to teach, the buildings are nothing but a hollow shell. You need to trim the items that don't directly benefit our education and push back in every legal way you can to make sure that time, energy, and expenses are dedicated to the task of educating. I'm homeschooled, and my family pays taxes for the public schoolers. That is a different topic, but it's still a tax. If you've ever read Atlas Shrugged or heard of it, then you'll know that when a government becomes unproductive, you end up with a system that cannot sustain itself without sucking the blood from the few who are productive. The students and parents of Lee County are the ones who will be bled dry. This tax is nothing more than a Band-Aid fix, and when the Band-Aid falls up, you're going to have to come up with another Band-Aid. If this vote goes into the election, there's no guarantee that it'll pass, but assume for a moment that this referendum does not pass in November. Will you have just been wasting the next 6 months doing nothing to resolve the fiscal concerns, or do you have other plans to resolve the financial concerns which are driving this tax to the vote in the first place? Who's John Galt? I am.
Next speaker is Ms. Tara Jenner.
Good evening, I'm Tara Jenner, and I don't think I need to say anything more about the half-cent sales tax because my daughter's much more eloquent than I am on many occasions and can do so without sounding like an instruction manual. I would like to speak tonight about two things. First, I'd like to actually encourage the board members to just notice the number of people that are wearing a nice little pin that looks like this, and it's a Liberty First pin. And it identifies many of the speakers this evening who've gone through special constitutional training in order to understand what our rights are. And just so that you're aware of this, if you're not, we don't have constitutional rights. The Constitution does not grant us rights. They are inherent. They are unalienable. They are not granted by government, and they cannot be taken by government. Do not fall into that false rhetoric yourselves as school board members. Tonight, I'd like to actually address Mr. Martin. I've mentioned this previously, and I'm going to state it again. You are the attorney for the school board, yet your continued appearance through your actions and comments is that you work to further the agenda of the superintendent and the Department of Education. I encourage you as a fellow attorney to revisit your charter and the fact that your fiduciary duty lies not with the superintendent or the DOE, but rather with the school board and, more importantly, the people the school board serves. I implore you to tackle your job in a positive way, looking not to why something can't be done, but instead using your gifts, your talents, and your legal acumen to find a way within the confines of the law to accomplish what the board is trying to do at the behest of the people. Challenge laws that fly in the face of the U.S. and state constitutions. Many of our laws, in fact, do that. They go well above and beyond what is required, and they infringe upon the rights of the people. Board, use your attorney and gain control over him and the superintendent, please. If they fail to comply, then use your authority to remove them from their positions without delay. At a minimum, you need to physically remove them from where they're located on this dais, as the current seating arrangement disrespects you and those in the chamber. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ms. Christine Ross.
Good evening. Christine Ross, the President and CEO of the Bonita Springs Area Chamber of Commerce and the Executive Director of the Bonita Springs Estero Economic Development Council. I felt the need to stay this evening to highlight my comments once again because not everyone was in attendance and you have a big decision tonight. I want to reiterate to you all that this situation with capital funding for the school district, it's not just your problem, it's everyone's problem. It's an economic development issue. If we don't have the best schools in the state of Florida, companies will not want to relocate here or expand here. Collier County schools are being chosen over Lee County schools regularly by companies that are bringing people into this area, and it's a fact. I find myself, as part of the strategic planning committee for the school district, blessed with additional knowledge that not everyone in the room has. If we aren't maintaining our schools and keeping them as first-class facilities, you cannot expect your students to learn the way that you need them to learn so that they will be contributors in the global economy when they graduate. And although I'm sorry about the unfunded mandates, because I don't agree with those either, we do need to have technology in the classrooms. There's no way we can expect our students to compete with Singapore and China and any of the other countries if we can't all operate computers. So I think that's a positive thing, and maybe we should be creative and seek out other funding. I want the taxpayers to have the ability to make this decision, and we stand ready to help you provide information from the finance department as to why this is so necessary. We will convene groups of folks and do whatever we can in our part of the county and just provide you with the support you need so that everyone has the full picture about why this is necessary. And I would encourage you to look for other ways of funding too. Maybe have the state funding reinstated. Maybe talk about a portion of the tourism tax. Either way, it takes a lot of different pieces of funding to make this happen, but it has to be sustainable. You need to be able to expect it. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Bob Rozier.
Good evening. My name is Bob Rozier. I operate a business down in Bonita Springs. I have about roughly 13 employees, and have 10 of which are also voters in Lee County, and also have children in Lee County as well, in the school system. But I tell you, y'all got kind of a porcupine by the tail right now, and it's kind of a tough situation to be in. I just wanted to thank you, number one, for what you do up here, because I know sometimes you don't feel appreciated, but I know how difficult your job can be from time to time. But having said that, capital funding is kind of a big issue, and from that standpoint, and I don't know if the sales tax is the right way or whatever the case might be, but if there's some other alternative. I know that you're constrained by what you can do by the legislature as far as what can be done and all, but I do know that the half-cent sales tax is just possibly just one option out there. But I've always operated in business by trying to keep the monkey on the back where the monkey belonged. This is clearly a decision that would appear to belong to the people, the voters of Lee County. And I would encourage you to place this item and turn it back over to them, and they will speak as to what they wish to do at that point, and then you'll know what direction you need to take. But again, like I say, I know it's a somewhat emotional issue. I've heard the other people here talk, but a half cent is a half cent. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. And for a family that's the $30,000 a year, I think is the point where you become eligible for reduced or free lunches, if you will, through the schools. That hits a family for about $150 a year. And I know that's money that's it's kind of tough. But the thing is that ultimately, what are your decisions? You all have a responsibility to back here in order to be able to, one, make sure we meet the needs for the educational requirements of our county for the students that are here, and the other thing too is also to maintain the properties that we already have in existence currently. So anyway, I thank you for your time, and again, thank you so much for what you do.
Next speaker. Next speaker is Mr. George Fox. Please ensure the microphone for the speakers is turned on.
Thank you, Board, for listening once again. The sales taxes, it resolves the decision in 91 by the state legislature to take school districts off of construction bonding and go into certificates of participation. That directly and dynamically changed the financing and the way school districts operate. And it's been 24 years going on this, and it's downhill. Performance in the classroom's downhill. Every district in the state has debt. It's a big mess. This sales tax, used properly to pay for schools in cash, take the district off of financing and remove a big expense, only in finance charges, interest expenses, debt service, and the amount of time and effort that the board and the entire district spends dealing with it. Every single decision that gets made, this debt is underneath it, causing problems. Yeah, county commissioners aren't for it because they're politicians. State legislatures, not really for it, they're politicians. School district is not political. It's nonpartisan. The decisions need to be made when it makes sense, and this makes sense. Politicians don't like it, well, they have their own purposes. But those children are not paying, they are paying more taxes by not having it than having it. The young lady that spoke over there, she doesn't realize how much money is taken out of the classrooms that she doesn't get because money has to be paid in debt service. Money has to be held in capital reserves to guarantee that the people who buy the debt get paid. They get paid first before the money. Our taxes aren't being spent on children. 15% of the tax money collected in this county either goes out, because we're a donor county, gets held in reserve to guarantee payment, or gets paid in interest and debt service. 85 cents on the dollar in taxes we paid aren't being applied to actual schools. It's feeding the big, gigantic, huge money machine that the state school system has become. And this district needs to lead the way and get us off of this system. It's not going to come from Tallahassee. It's not going to get any help from the county commission. It's up to the school board and the people of this county. Educating children is a privilege. It's a duty, it's a privilege, and it's one that I think everyone wants to do. Everyone wants a solid school system. They're willing to pay the taxes to do it. Please vote it in. Let's have the debate, and this is a winning issue. It will win. The sales tax is the way to go. It's far superior to any other method there is of financing schools. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ms. Charla Fox.
Thank you, Board. Charla Fox. Once again, I am a teacher in the district. One of the things that I've been hearing tonight is we have a lot of different opinions, and that's good. People are learning, people are gaining knowledge. I'm all about gaining knowledge. I'm a math teacher. I can't help it. One of the things that I think that we need to be aware of is that we are under time constraints. And I think that everyone here needs to be aware of that. If we are going to go this way and put it on the ballot, as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, we need to go ahead and make this decision so that we can get on the ballot. So there's not a matter of really putting this off if we're going to go this way. I believe that putting it forward, having the debate, educating the people about the realities of the system, and that's one thing that was best for the school district in and of itself and best for the students, is to truly understand how the district operates, what goes into it, what our outcomes are intended to be. And this could be all part of that conversation. And to have that robust debate between people who believe in this idea and people who don't. People are thinking it's an expensive idea. I understand that, and yes, it is expensive, but I think it's more expensive in the long run for us not to go ahead and have this debate and get out there and have this conversation. And I personally will support the school board 100%. I'm not all for raising taxes. I don't like to pay more taxes, I'll be truthful, but I am a firm believer in doing what is for the best for our students. And I believe that this is a step in the right direction and taking the reins back, because this is money that comes directly to you and you as the purveyors of the school board and with the input of the other people in the district, then are able to utilize it the way you see fit and the way that they have said, yes, we agree, this is what we want you to do with it. And that's what putting it on the ballot can do for us, I believe. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan, those are all the cards.
Bob Valenta?
I can't even come close to speaking as well as Miss Susko tonight. Wasn't that incredible? Tara, I meant to wear my pin, but I forgot. I apologize. I was not able to make the briefing meeting, but I watched it and heard many comments that concerned me, like, it's for the children. And if we want good education, we have to do this. As if only people who are for this tax care for the children. Or that this is the only way to care for the children, that this is the only way to accomplish the goals, the needs. There are budget cuts that haven't been made, and quite frankly, opt out. It'll pay for itself. You talk about the sunset for 5 years, and I can just hear the politician at the end of that 5 years. Well, the 5 years is up. I guess we'll let it sunset, said no politician ever. You can't spend your way out of debt. We can't afford $1.2 million for an initiative that doesn't have a snowball's chance in Lee County. Each board member who wastes this $1.2 million tonight will be held accountable at election time. Off-year elections like this initiative are won by a very few. I urge you to think about what kind of turnout the red shirts are capable of turning out. It was said by one board member, I believe it was Jeannie, that if the whole board and county commission wasn't behind it, it would fail, based on someone that you were talking to that was well, I can tell you that the whole board and or the whole county commission is not behind this. So this would be the equivalent of taking $1.2 million and in the wind. Thank you.
Mary Orthodoxu?
Good evening, Board, and I'd like to say thank you very much for what you did last board meeting. It was brave, and you got that backbone I was looking for. We appreciate it very much. Now, for your half-a-cent tax. All due respect, Mr. Fox, it's not even going to put a dent in this debt we have, and you know it. But let's talk about all the waste. Let's talk about really saving some money and putting it back in the schools for our teachers and our children. How about the hundreds of thousands of dollars in textbooks that went in the trash this year? Does the board know about that? Wrong books ordered. Instead of sending them back and getting a credit, we dumped them. We dumped them. That's the taxpayers' money. Let the public know about this. You want to keep taking their money? Let's be totally honest here. So we reordered books for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Twice. Ms. Graham, you're not looking over here. Why?
I'm taking notes.
Mm-hmm. The public needs to know the truth. There is waste in this district. There's abuse in this district. Until we have this waste under control, how dare you even ask to piss away the taxpayers' money? How could you even think of it, dream of it? You have to consider what's going on here. For those that have not been paying attention, it's time to pay attention because we, the watchdogs, are paying attention. And we're going to hold every one of you accountable. This is our money and our children and our teachers that hurt by the errors of your ways. The error of your way is allowing this one to keep doing what she's doing. Again, we are instructing you to terminate Nancy Graham immediately. Thank you.
Chris Quackenbush?
Good evening. And I have your little pin that you came and went to the class. so I need to get it to you. And that's so important. You know, we all know that job one here is teaching the kids. The kids should be the number one focal point. And yet, our kids have been going down and down and down in their test scores. The ACT test scores, which are nationally normed, show that we're number 47 out of the 50 states. And yet, our leaders will have us believe that our kids are just number one, they're great, everything's good. Well, it's not, because computerized testing doesn't produce American exceptionalism. And computerized emphasis doesn't produce American exceptionalism. I don't care about the Chinese.
Wait a minute.
Stop.
Excuse me. Please turn on the microphone. Thank you.
Still-
Please proceed. You have 2 minutes and 10
I
seconds.
didn't have time.
No, ma'am, you have 2 minutes and
I
10
need to
seconds.
proceed.
Please proceed.
How much more
I'm sorry?
He told you how. Continue. He told you
Okay, it wasn't
he
on.
told you how much time
Okay,
you
now it's on again. Thank you. So I was saying Japan, China, Russia, they all have very rigid systems. But I don't want their kids. They didn't produce American exceptionalism. Our kids come from fostering that individual genius that lies within each child to be developed and fostered by us. That's our job. So when you say you want to spend $1.2 million on adding taxes, that's great to have a nice building. It's great to have some computers that aid instruction, not take tests on. But what we really need to be doing is standing up for our kids and changing the standards. What they're learning is abysmal. It's still on. Okay. Such as, is it on? Okay. Okay. So I hope you'll give me some more time for all of this. But so anyway, this $1.2 million that you're going to spend on this initiative is because it's a special election. This issue is so important that it's important for the entire county to vote on this, not just for a special election. And we need to save that $1.2 million. If we want to know how the voters are feeling, let's do a small survey. $3,000, $10,000, something like that will serve to show you exactly where we stand on a half-cent sales tax. It's been tried before, it will likely fail. But if you insist on spending a small amount, that would be reasonable. Not spending $1.2 million on some ridiculous idea when we have number one job at our hand and we're not doing it. Please focus on changing the standards, using a nationally normed test instead of the state tests. We have, as they said, we have the right to do that. You have the duty to do that, to stand up for our children. Thank you so much for last meeting and standing up against the 30%. But let's go further. Let's show those people at the state and the federal government, they are bullies. And they are violating the Constitution by bullying you. So stand up to the bullies. Let our kids know we care.
Tom Fosse.
Good evening. If this goes out, I'm a teacher. I'll just use my teacher voice. It won't be a problem. I also had to write out my thoughts because as a history teacher, we're the best at going off on tangents. So we tell great stories, and it's amazing. And my kids are going to do awesome on the EOC that does or does not count tomorrow. Don't worry. Okay. I am a product of the Lee County School District. I went to Pelican Elementary, Gulf Middle, and Cape Coral High School. I went to UCF, came back to become a public school teacher in Lee County. I urge you to allow the voters to have a voice on the half-cent sales tax. All of you should be commended for having the political will to even discuss this option. Most school boards wouldn't even touch it. As a school board, you've been placed in an impossible position. The state legislature has had for over a decade forced mandates on you without providing you the funding to fulfill those mandates. 3 years ago, they cut $1.3 billion from the state education budget. I'm still waiting for my money back. As the county begins to recover from the recession, more families are moving back into Lee County. We need more schools to deal with our growing population. However, the state legislature has decided to funnel the capital funding money away from public schools to charter schools. Those legislators then had the audacity to send you a letter to tell you the half-cent sales tax isn't necessary. Here are some more options. How about you respond to them by simply asking those legislators who represent us to send us our money back so that we don't have to do this. Give us the money that's supposed to be ours, not the charter schools, and maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. It's my opinion that the half-cent sales tax is the best option to help us build 21st century schools that our students deserve. The sales tax would allow the cost of these new schools to be spread out amongst full-time residents, our part-time snowbird friends, and the tourists and spring breakers who come to watch the Twins, the Red Sox, and party on Fort Myers Beach. Again, this spreads out the responsibility to everyone who comes into Lee County, even the people who stop on the way to stop at our wonderful new Wawa. Please allow the voters of Lee County to decide if they want to invest their money in the future leaders of this county by investing in our new public schools. Thank you.
Ron Fior?
Here, and I'm here from Bonita Springs, and I stuck around. I didn't bother going back home and so on. I got to refrain from getting into these anecdotal things with you folks because the time is limited. Let me say at the onset, $1.2 million to promote your facts versus what you will deem to be our fallacies or falsehoods is it's unacceptable. You cannot do that. Form a PAC and have everyone who's interested in the passage of it pay into the PAC and spend that money. You can keep your hands clean. You don't have to touch what the PAC does. We're having trouble in Bonita Springs right now with an auxiliary PAC for the fire district union in Bonita Springs, and there's a big complaint about that. And I bring that to your attention because you want to remain free of any such activity happening, falling upon yourselves in the future. Lee charter schools, absolutely. I don't know why Bonita is pawning off comments like, well, we don't think education should be in the profit syndrome. You are in the business of charter schools along with those AKA public schools that we know about. I think you should get involved in disseminating as much information as you can about your participation and your activities as they relate to starting your own charter schools under your umbrella, or inviting those people that are professionals and in it for the long haul, the private sector. I don't think you've exercised all the possibilities at your disposal for dealing with the denial, instead of relishing the fact that you've gotten 45% from Lee County Commission. I would not lay back there or sit back in your seats and thank them, the good Lord, for what they did. I'd make it known within the world of Lee that we know about that you're very displeased with it and continue moving forward with it. Now, by the way, you also have time, much time in front of you before you hand in the language if you're going to move forward with this sales tax business. You have a lot of time left before you hand that stuff over to the supervisor of elections. It is negotiable and it's doable, and from June forward, you have time. June, July, August, I'd say, if you will push the issue. Exercise the legal and otherwise with the county commission with respect to the denial of the 100% that you're trying to make a case to us, members of the public, that you need the dough. Then do it with the commission. Is it possible to get any more time?
No.
Thank you, sir. Your
Thank
time
you.
is up.
Well, I'll keep summing.
I'm going to make just one comment with respect to the 1.2 million. It's not for advocacy. It is for the cost of it is for the cost of the election. It is a fee that we pay to the supervisor of elections.
No advocacy, we're not allowed to advocate.
Okay. Dr. Graham, would you please present your recommendation?
Approval through adoption of the attached resolution and project list to proceed with the placement of a referendum on the ballot for consideration by the duly qualified electors of Lee County, Florida on November 3rd, 2015 of a levy by the School District of Lee County for a 1/2 cent per dollar school capital outlay sales surtax for a period of 5 years to begin on January 1st, 2016. The purpose of this referendum is financing the construction of new schools, renovations and additions to existing schools, the upgrading and equipping of schools for technology, and the retirement of bond indebtedness incurred to accomplish projects associated with this referendum, and approval for the payment of $1.2 million to pay for this election.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve through adoption of the attached resolution and project list to proceed with the placement of a referendum on the ballot for consideration by the duly qualified electors of Lee County, Florida on November 3rd, 2015 of a levy by the School District of Lee County for 1/2 cent per dollar school capital outlay sales surtax for a period of 5 years to begin on January 1, 2016. The purpose of this referendum is financing the construction of new schools, renovations and additions to existing schools, the upgrading and equipping of schools for technology, and the retirement of bond indebtedness incurred to accomplish projects associated with this referendum, and approval for the payment of $1.2 million to pay for this election. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher. Second by Ms. LaRiviere. Board members' discussion. I, for one, Mr. Toiber, would love to hear from you since you weren't here this afternoon.
Well, point of order, Madam Chair, the person who makes the motion goes first, and then the second, and then we can go defer.
Sorry. All right, then. Ms. Fisher.
Okay. Looking at the needs and the impact of the fallen economy over the last several years, and the fact that we have 20,000 more students than we had 10 years ago, and we are working with a budget that's 1.3 instead of 1.5 billion, we're doing more with less. I have listened very carefully to all of the comments on both sides, specifically about the cost of technology and testing. And I philosophically agree that it's a problem. However, that does not stop the 1,500 to 2,000 kids who are moving into the district annually from coming. It does not stop the needs that we have for maintaining the buildings that we currently own and are in relatively good shape now. If I have any reluctance, it is, and I'm going to read again a letter that I received from a business person who was successful in passing a voter-supported tax issue. The policy board has to be respected as a unified body of leaders within the community. The CEO and administration need to be thought of as efficient and effective. The voters need to know exactly what they are getting and when they will get it if they support the tax, and I had that one start. Any dissension among board members could cause the vote to fail. Any organized opposition from other local elected leaders could cause the vote to fail. And there needs to be a comprehensive public education campaign conducted to support the voters. And I had that one start also. The campaign should be led by multiple teams made up of a school board member, a school administrator, and a business leader who go out to the public with an approved presentation and talk to every group who will listen. It takes time and an immense effort, but it can work, as it has worked for this gentleman 3 out of 3 times. So I think with that being said, and knowing that, as the one gentleman said, we do have some time to educate the public, I have been talking about the sales tax with my constituents and business leaders in the community, and largely have gotten a very positive response once people understand exactly what's involved. And I want to thank Mr. Fox for the information that he provided us, because it was clear and to the point, and using that, I was able to show the picture of how much more expensive it is to finance than it is to do the half-cent sales tax. The other appealing piece is that everybody pays a little bit, including our visiting friends during season. So those are just things I wanted to put out for consideration and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaRiviere.
Well, there were a number of reasons why I went ahead and seconded it. Number one being, in order for us to discuss it, we needed that second. So we needed to move forward with the discussion among the board. The other reason I seconded it, that is a tongue twister. I do believe we need to bring it before the county. It's a shame that this isn't 2016, where there would be larger involvement in the voting process. So I understand that piece, and maybe that's something we need to consider. But along the way, there will be significant cuts that are going to happen if we don't have, over the next 5 years, that benefit of the sales tax. For those of you who are not here and able to attend the briefing, I highly encourage you to watch the briefing. I highly encourage you to plug through all of the items in the agenda, including all of the background information, so you can see where the anticipated revenues are coming from and anticipated places where we will be cutting. Yes, there are areas to cut. Yes, there are areas of waste. It is a rarity that schools will get rid of a textbook like what happened. That situation is not how district guidelines are in place for if there's an issue. Usually those pieces would be at least recycled where we would get funding, or they would be used, sold to use textbooks. So somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. It's going to cost us more money in the long run if we are not able to have that half-cent sales tax go through. We are going to be costing our taxpayers more money in the long run. And I did not write the total amount for building the 3 schools, but I believe it was somewhere around $170 million. Am I correct? Over the next 5 years, it would be about $175 million.
No, 75 million. You
For
got
3 schools.
Well, it's a high school, or the 2 high schools? Or
2 high schools and a middle school.
5 million apiece, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's about 135.
135. I was trying to remember what the number, I didn't write that number down this afternoon. If we're not able to get in some other revenue, we are going to be stuck with putting in more schools and adding that to our current debt. My job is not to go out there and try to get everybody to vote one way or the other. And to be honest with you, however we decided about bringing the referendum forward, it doesn't even say how we're going to vote. It just says we want the people to vote, to say how they feel. But we're caught between a rock and a hard place. Someone asked us if we had been speaking with our legislators to try to get some changes. Yes, we have been speaking with legislators. We have been doing everything within our power to try to make those changes to help bring in the revenue. We don't have much control over that. Yes, we did go, and we asked the county commissioners for more than the 45%. No one can say that we have not been doing our due diligence with trying to find other ways to bring in other revenues. The only thing we haven't done is had bake sales and other fundraising efforts to bring in money. We haven't done those pieces. We do need to do some serious fundraising, I think, for the district. The people need the right to vote on it. They need to have the information on where we're going. And no, you're right, Mary, the half-cent sales tax won't take care of our debt. And we can't use that money for that debt anyway. It can only be used for debt that's incurred with the referendum. That was corrected today at the briefing meeting.
No conversation.
I'm sorry, no conversation, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm trying to clarify, and I guess I can't make anybody happy. And therefore, that's not my job. But I believe we need to bring it forward. If not this year, we need to bring it forward next year.
Mr. Toiver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was following listening skills I was holding, trying to follow protocol. I've been wanting to speak on this matter. We had our meeting last 2 weeks ago, and my position was that I am not for a sales tax unless we have a contingency plan. My response and the direction that when I gave my answer to the board chair and the superintendent was, and it was quite clear, how are we going to get to where we need to be without the sales tax? And I don't mean if it fails, we're going to do something else. I want to know, the number was told that we need 42 million annualized across each year for 5 years. That's 25 million for the new capital, for 125 capital expense for the new building, 17 million to restore us back to our preventive maintenance. So the number's 42 million. We got 5.4 on the capital for our impact fees, and people are saying, well, we should have gone for all of it. It's 5.4 million. If we would have got all of it, we got 9 million. So the difference is not, and a $42 million bogey, people get sidetracked on diversions and smoke and mirrors, and you hear people with the same type of argument when they talk about, well, you don't want to put all the burden on a certain, on the taxpayer, on the landowners, or on the builder. If you move all the impact fees and now you target one industry, our construction industry, which is one of our primary industries, to carry the whole load. The county commission did what they felt was responsible given the look of the entire parameters. So they gave us 45%. It is what it is. So that's their purview, and that was their position. So we're dealing with what we have. So we have $5.4 million off that 42. Several weeks ago, we were told that we had funds. We had $15 million worth of unallocated funds that we had that weren't spoken for, that we could use for moving to salaries. Those, we're not in a contract year. Those type of dollars could get moved. We have to get moved into capital. We take 24 million from our capital expense. We've done it forever. We moved it to operating to pay operating expenses. So the $4 million is PICO dollars. We can't move those, but the 20 we can move. So 15 of it, we already said there's no impact. There's 15 million to move. We got 5 million to go. So 5 million, again, to take that reduction to be able to move, and actually, if you just take the 15 million of where we need to say the $15 million out of our capital, we now have a shortfall of $21 million. We have $21 million that are short in our capital. We actually have the ability under Florida Statute 1011.71 to raise $250,000 on ourselves without anybody help. We asked the legislators, they said, we'll pass. That's their prerogative. We can do it right now. They're enabled us to do that. We can raise $250,000. And people say, we don't want to raise taxes. Understand there's a caveat to 100.71, 1011.71. If we raise $250,000 in capital, we have to reduce, based upon the RLE, the same amount of money on our operating side. But how that's not so bad, I mean, it is bad. We don't want to take any money out of our operating. But at the end of the day, when you don't have money, you got to do something. You know, in my household, you got to cut back. And so if you take the $21 million raised in capital, that's an $18 million cut in our operating. That's about 3% of our operating budget. Now, people say, well, that's easy, you should be able to cut 3%. It's not easy because we have 70% or 68% of our operating budget is salaries. And so it's directly affecting teachers. So I'm not saying this stuff is easy. All I'm saying is I wanted a plan and I didn't get it. We can come up with a plan to figure out how we're going to get there. Instead, what I got was a plan on the briefing plan was actually showing $10 million of a reduction that wasn't about $10 million, anything what I'm talking about. It's about that $10 million that they're going to move this year. Out of the 15 we could move, they're only going to move 10 of it. And it's how we're going to get that 10 back so we can restore that 10 back to spend more money. And the reductions that we're doing, elimination of activity buses, eliminate lights on athletic fields, eliminate our county-wide programs, those are things that directly impact our kids. I just think I'm not getting the answers that I need to justify myself to say we're anywhere close to a tax. So I'm not satisfied on that portion. Then I go back to exactly what I heard the comments of all the people saying, and I wrote them down because I was not here. You know, Ben Nelson made the comment, he said, well, let's just put it out there and see what happens. Let the interest groups hash it out. Let the chips fall where they may. Well, those are our chips. Those are $1.2 million of our chips. If you want to find out how the community sits, we need to, again, do what several of the members out in the audience said, take a poll, do a survey. Any successful campaign in the state of Florida that's been that's happened in Manatee, that happened up in Seminole, all these tax initiatives that have passed have taken 2 years to plan and execute to get the word out there. I'm not saying we don't need the money, because we do. And anybody that wants to have that argument, I can show you how we can make the things work for now, but it's going to be painful. And it's something that we only do, and we let out all our, and please, teachers know, we understand, this is not a long-term fix. We understand how important our teachers are, and we know how people are underpaid. But right now, we don't have the money. This crisis didn't happen overnight, but we're in a crisis now. We have to fix it and figure out how to do it. And the way we do it right now is we fix it internally to figure out what we need to fix. Then we figure out how we're going to actually do information dissemination and get ourselves ready so when we go out to the public, we don't have two sectors of opinions. We have everybody saying we need it because they've seen the demonstrated needs. We've shown where we're going to spend it. We show unequivocally how we're going to spend it, and we're going to show that where we need it. In the meantime, while we're doing that, we'll continue to hit with our legislature and say, look, in 2007, you took $250,000 out of our capital millage because times were bad, and the school district said everybody needs to cut back. So we did. And in 2008, we cut back another $250,000. So now we cut back $500,000 of our capital expenditures and said, okay, we'll get through this time. Well, then they forgot about that, so now we're in much better times. As a matter of fact, in 10, 11, and 12, we've seen a huge restoration in the dollars coming in the state of Florida, and they forgot about that we're still at $1.5 million of our capital millage. We need that capital millage. We took a $451 million capital hit between the years of 2007 and 8 up to 2014. That money's not coming back. And all of the damage that we've done to our buildings and the lack of maintenance that we've done and the lack of repairs to our capital assets, those are just, we can't fix anything. We got a letter. Somebody talked about our letter today. I'm actually going to write it. We responded, said thank you, but there was a lot of different issues. I'm going to send a letter out, and it'll be out tomorrow. You can ask public requests because I'm going to address every one of those issues. Every one of them but two are completely infeasible or impractical. Two that are something to explore, but none of them, absolutely no suggestion, generates more dollars, and we need more dollars. So it doesn't matter if you have a better way of skinning the cat moving going forward. If you don't have the ability to build the seats now, you can't function. So I guess I'm talking in circles. The bottom line is I believe, like everybody else said, that we do, Ms. Fox made a really good point. We have an information gap. Our people just don't know, and unfortunately, the school board just doesn't make the radar. We had 40 people here today. 40 people, in a community that's 500,000. So we've got so many people we have to educate, and we haven't done that job. And so before we do that, we can't expect to just go out there and hope and pray, because I don't want to take $1.2 million on a bet that it may or may not pass. I think that's irresponsible, and I think that's foolish. I think we need to go out there, take surveys. When we find out that we're at 80% or we're at 70%, then I think it's prudent to go out there and put your money on a horse that you know is going to win. So I won't be supporting this motion today, and especially the biggest reason why I won't. The letter was very good. Ms. Fisher read this. This is the second time she's read it, and she talked about the things that we need for it to pass. And some of the biggest ones was, if we had interest groups against us. You heard at the briefing meeting today, the same interest groups that defeated the sales tax back in 2008 are still there, and they're still against it. Now we have more interest groups that have now grown that are more against it. And we also have our county commission that's against it, and our entire state delegation that's against it. Those are insurmountable odds against people that really should be on our side. And if we work with them and show them where we need them, I think we can get everybody on our side. The first time we mentioned the sales tax, several months ago, the next day I was inundated with speaking engagements. Everybody wanted just to put me in a box and beat me up. That's okay. I went out to Pine Island, to the Chamber of Commerce out there, and I spoke to about 60, 70 people. When I started, every single one of them was against the sales tax. 2.5 hours later, because I've got a pretty good stamina, you can tell I can keep talking, when I left, everybody but one was for the sales tax. And the only one that wasn't was because they don't trust our state legislature, that we didn't make steak and mirrors or smoke and mirrors, they take it up in Tallahassee. And I said, we can't fix that. But if we can actually, get the tax proved and we show where we're going to do it quarterly, put out in the news press how we spent it, exactly tell you where it's going to go, and then spend it where we're going to go, there wasn't anybody in that room that wasn't supportive of it. But that took 2.5 hours for 70 people. It's going to take a long, concerted effort. I think we can do it. I think we got the board that can do it. I think we got the district and the people that want to do it. I just think 5 months is a little bit too premature. So I think what we need to do is focus on how we're going to get where we need to be and make a long-range plan and get us there strategically and with a better plan. Thank you.
Mrs. Dozier.
Thank you. And we're all talking about these same 7 points that Ms. Fisher actually read, and we all must run in the same circles because I have those same 7 points as well. And I would like to ask that these be put into the record, please. Reasons that we should not go out. You need to have a unified body of members and the governing body that is promoting it. Well, at this table, I will tell you we do not have a unified body. The CEO and administration need to be thought of as efficient and effective by the community. I'm not sure that that is the way it happens right now, and I think part of that could be education. Number 3, voters need to know exactly what they are getting, when they are getting it, and exactly what it's going to be providing. And one of the questions that I asked today at the briefing, we have a list of everybody that's going to be affected, but then we have a backup list of the things that actually are, I guess, a peeled down version of what's going to happen where. But my question was never answered. I said, who all put this list together? Did we go into the schools and ask the schools themselves if they needed anything? I never got an answer to that question. Any dissension among board members will cause a referendum to fail. And I'll read that one again. Any dissension among board members will cause that referendum to fail. And unfortunately, on more than one occasion, it has been witnessed publicly that there is dissension among board members. Any organized opposition from any elected body will cause the vote to fail. We received a letter from our legislative delegation locally, and they basically told us in no uncertain terms that they would oppose it if we went out for the referendum. Also, our county commission basically have said the same thing. We've got homework that we need to do before we can go to the people with this, I believe. There needs to be a comprehensive public education campaign to gain support of the voters. I've heard, I don't know how many people ask, why don't y'all do a survey, do a random poll, There are different ways that you can go out. We haven't done any of that. Instead, we just sit here and we twiddle our thumbs, and we put things together, and we put information, and we decide where we're going to cut and where we're not going to cut, and then we put that out there, and we hope that everybody will agree with us. Well, evidently, that's not happening either. The campaign has to be led by a multifaceted team made up of a school board member, school administration, and a business leader to go out to the public with an approved, and I stress, with a approved presentation to every group that will listen. I'm not sure that the time between now and November is enough time for us to go out to every group. And I have a few questions that I ask myself. Have we looked at every possible area of reduction? Did we look at all the departments out there? Did we ask the departments if there were any ways that we could cut costs? Because I know in a lot of Fortune 500 companies, when they really need to make some big cuts, they go directly to the departments, because it's the people within those departments that can see where you can really make some cuts. I don't know that we did that. If I can't afford my expenses at home, I don't have the luxury of going out for a referendum. Instead, I've got to tighten my belt. I have got to look at ways that I can cut my own expenses before I can go and try to borrow money or try to get money any other way. I feel like it's inherent that we do that. And something that somebody said to me that was very powerful to me, and they didn't just say it in between the two meetings today to me, but I've heard it numerous times. Jeannie, y'all have not earned the right to ask the people for this referendum. Okay, what do you mean by that? Y'all have not earned the right to ask the people for this referendum. And I know the different ways that they say that we have not earned the right. Therefore, we get paid the big bucks to make these tough decisions, and this is a rather tough decision, because I can only imagine what some people are going to say about me, that I don't care about children, that I don't care about this community. I can just hear what people will say. I do care about this community. I care about this community, and therefore, I will not be supporting this, because I don't think that we have done our due diligence we don't have the right to go out and ask the public at this time for this.
My turn. I think this conversation is as someone has said, is about the future of quality education in Lee County. And I feel very strongly that it's time for us to ask the public what kind of public education system they want. I would like to make one comment about the work that has been put into this by staff. I don't think we could ask more of staff than they have given us with respect to all of the work that they have put in for the last half dozen months, answering every question, diving deeper and deeper, giving us information, restating it in a way that we can understand it better, then coming back at us again. And in the process, actually, I think a lot of people in the community have started to understand what our problem is. I think it's been a really good exercise for not just us, but for the community. But I want to thank staff who have worked really hard on this proposal. And I also want to acknowledge, as Mrs. Fisher mentioned, in '08, I believe it was, we had a budget of $1.5 billion. Since then, Our school district has grown by thousands of students. Our budget is now $1.3 billion. Funds were withdrawn from us with our consent and recognition and acknowledgement at a time when we were all struggling. Money is coming back, but it's not coming back to us. And I dearly hoped that we would have the opportunity to go out to the public and say, tell us what you want. But that's not going to happen, and I cannot support a recommendation on this issue that does not have a supermajority vote of the board. So I will not be supporting the with great regret. Great regret. I think it's, I cannot support the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, if I may just review a few comments and ask a couple of questions, maybe of Mr. Martin. Okay, if we wait till 2016, if we did that, then we would not be paying to put it on, paying the supervisor of elections. It would go on
On a
no
general election
cost?
ballot, yes, that's my
On a
understanding.
general election ballot. Okay. If we were to go forward this year, by what date do we need to have the resolution to the supervisor of elections?
Her request has been 120 days before in our previous conversations with her, but I have to remind the board that with respect to this form of resolution, it has to also go to the county commissioners
Right.
for them to review and give direction to the supervisor of elections. So that would take some period of time, I would assume at least 30 days.
Okay. Okay. Well, I do agree with Mrs. Morgan with regret that if we're not going to have a supermajority and we're not in unison, although I do believe that in 3 months we could do quite a good marketing job in educating the community, I think that we need to be a body of governance that is on the same page and working together and have majority of feedback from our constituents, just to even begin, so.
Ms. LaRiviere?
I regret that we can't go forward at this time, but I also believe, and at the same time, I am going to be putting my best. You're going to hear a lot from me because it needs to be out there in 2016. It has to be out there, and we need to make sure that we are fully prepared. And I will say I was a newbie coming in on this baby, and I'm still learning a few ropes, and the whole thing just, I wasn't ready to deal with it. Although, I will say on the campaign trail, I did say that we needed to have, we do need to go, I definitely believe we need to have some type of a tax piece where all of our community is participating and helping our education system in some form.
Yeah. Mr. Torber?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just hope that if this does not pass today, that we immediately take step and, I mean, it's not over, it's just begun. We have $42 million that we have to find in our capital. We have to make the decisions. We have to give the direction to the superintendent. We have to move money over. We got to fix our building. We need $25 million per year. That's the minimum. If we don't get $25 million per year for the next 5 years, then we're doing cop spending. And as Mr. Fox eloquently pointed out, that's really not an option at the level of debt that we're at right now. I'm really not supportive. We approved it as a last resort. I don't believe we have to use it. So I think our focus is at a minimum to get $25 million into capital every year. I think then we need to focus on, once we do that, how much of the $17 million can we do to restore, how much of our maintenance, preventive maintenance we can restore. So I think our board still has to roll up our sleeves, and I think we need to work together and make this work, and I think we can, and at the same time put together a platform that, as we're doing this, to look forward in the future to see if it's necessary, and then if it's feasible for a sales tax at a later time.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Motion fails 5-0. Board member comments. I will start with Mr. Teuber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things that I'd like to have the superintendent address. There was a comment about the EOCs, that they still had to pass, they wouldn't pass their grade. I thought we were unequivocal saying that the EOCs won't count for our students, so I want verification publicly that that is not a false statement. Then there was the EOCs about our teacher evaluation, and again, conversations that I had with the superintendent, maybe I misunderstood them, but that the teacher evaluations that we've done enough of our assessments, that the EOCs will have no impact on our teachers as well. Those two things said, we wanted the emphasis on all our teachers to give, and they have been doing a great job, as have our administration and our students, that they're giving their best efforts for the EOCs to do what we need to do, because we're not shirking our responsibility and we're not doing anything is defiant in the sense of, trying to take on the state. We just felt that, we're not going to get the data, what we need to do our jobs. We think it was done very poorly. We think we should have more control to do it ourselves. Tell us what you want to have done, and we can get it done. And to have somebody that knows people that are just have too much on their plate already to try to figure out education or give it to political entities up in Tallahassee is the wrong thing to do. Then the other issue that somebody brought up about the ACTs, that we're 47th out of 50, that you need to take that with a grain of salt, in the sense that if you don't pass the FCAT, our remediation is you can take the ACT as a placement. So we have some of our lowest performers taking the ACT. In Michigan, if you're not in the top 80 percentile, they don't let you take it unless you pay for it yourself. So it's a whole different parameter. We're not comparing apples to apples. I will still put our students up against anybody across the country any day of the week and twice on the weekends. The other issue that I had, and it's something we've talked about, not just the board attorney placement, and if it's perception, I don't know what's the harm of, he can be over here by me, I'd like to be able to whisper in his ear, but the whole change of the parameter of the board until we get to 7, somebody made a comment to me, and I thought it was really great, that we actually put the student in the middle, and then we put us to the sides, and so the focus is actually on the student, and then Dr. Graham and Mr. Martin would blank, would wing us, and that we'd be in the middle, but the focus would be on that student. It's just an idea that I'd like to throw out to the board for consideration, that maybe it's something we could do to actually look like the mission that we're trying to accomplish, and I think would be very, very rewarding, and I think the student would be honored to be there. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. LaRiviere.
I do want to say that we are a governance team, and that team involves the board members, the superintendent, and our attorney. Our attorney has been hired to serve our needs as the school board, but as part of his contract also states that he will be the one who will be answering legal questions to Dr. Graham, rather than us seeking counsel outside of here and having to pay another fee. So I want to clarify that Dr. Graham does have a right to ask any questions she may need to ask Mr. Martin during the time, just as we do. And sometimes it's just a very quickie. So we do monitor and we do watch it. And so I'm just letting you know that so far I have no problem with Dr. Graham asking questions of Mr. Martin. Or should I say Dr. Martin? I keep catching myself. Dr. Martin, Dr. Teuber. The other part that I wanted to share, earlier today I was addressing some other pieces, but I want to share something that was special on Sunday, and I know that Dr. Graham mentioned it this afternoon at the briefing meeting, was the LCIC Hall of Fame. That was this last Sunday evening. One of the men that was recognized was Thomas Teasel, who had been a cross-country runner at North Fort Myers High Academy. Before it was North Fort Myers Senior High School Academy of the Arts. And ironically, his cross-country coach had been Jeff Summers. And what was really special that evening was Coach Summers' Watt family was there in support of Tom Tissell, and because otherwise Jeff would have been there that evening as a support. Makes me realize more and more, as large as the Lee County School District is, it's a very small community of family. And as family members sometimes agree on things, family members sometimes disagree on things. But that doesn't mean we don't all work together and come out fighting. I can say whatever I want to about Kathleen Morgan, but don't you dare say anything about her. I can say anything I want to about Mark Castellano, but don't you dare say anything about him. That's the way family is. And we're all here to be 100% behind each other, and we as a board need to be 100% behind each other.
Mrs. Dozier.
Well, I actually made the motion the night that we talked about the EOCs, and the motion was that it was to be used only for diagnostic purposes. Diagnostic purposes means just simply placement of students. So the fact that there's been any misunderstanding, there should be no misunderstanding out there, because that was the direction of the board. And Dr. Graham, since that was the direction of the board, I certainly hope that will be what is going on in every school, and that there's nothing else, because that was, in fact, clear, I think, direction with that motion that took place. I would like to recognize our esteemed part of our legislative delegation that has sat here and listened to a lot of this information, the Honorable Representative Matt Caldwell. Matt, you want to stand up? Your Honor. Thank you for being here. I know that that you got an earful tonight. There was definitely a lot of information, and I think that you were able to hear just how passionate our parents are. And we have a lot of people in this community that care about this community, that care about this school district, and we hear from them. And then when we come up there, as 5 board members to Tallahassee, sometimes you don't get the full flavor, if you will, of what's going on down here at home. And I think it's good to know that, because we've got good parents down here, and our parents are looking out for their kids, and we're trying to get, that's the message that we're trying to get across to you. As far as the seating, I know that we have had that conversation before. I know somebody said something about, because when we get to 7 members, we're going to have almost a full dais up here. And I think initially these 2 areas right here were made for staff. And in fact, I remember years ago, the superintendent sat over there, and that was the way staff sat. I am not always able to see the face of the superintendent. In fact, she even mentioned that she's not always able to see our face, because a lot of times we are looking straight forward. And I personally would like to see her face, because if another board member is talking and she's over there or she's over there, then I'm probably going to be able to see her face and how she's reacting, because I think that is very important sometimes in how we know how we're going to proceed with things. So that's just an idea, and I would certainly support that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. I mentioned this afternoon, Mr. Teuber, that there was some interest in proceeding with more board development work. So I mentioned that we have 3 meetings scheduled right now that are workshops: May 26th, protocol and policy; June 9th, FSBA board training using data; June 23rd, protocol and policy. And the question I asked was, do we want to add a meeting for more development work, more board development work, or do we want to take one of these scheduled meetings and dedicate it to board development work instead of the agenda that we've laid out? So I'm looking for board member comment on whether we want to schedule. Yes, Mrs. Dozier.
I missed the second date, May the 26th, June the 23rd.
June 9th.
June 9th.
Yeah.
We already have a workshop on the 26th, correct?
Yes. No, I'm just saying, we have these workshops. So the question is, do we want to, is there interest in board development, another board development session? If so, do we want to add something to what we already have for workshops, or do we want to change a workshop that we have already scheduled, or that we've already laid out the agenda for, to do board development work? Am I not being clear? I guess the first question is, do we want to do more board development work? Is there interest in doing more board development work?
I'm interested in that.
Mrs. Fisher? Mr. Teuber?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Mrs. Dozier?
That's fine. Are you asking to, I would say that we take one of these workshops that we have and turn that into board development.
Okay, so you're interested in doing board development. So that answers the first question. The second question then becomes, do we want to add a workshop, or do we want to convert an existing workshop towards this purpose?
Can we do the 26th? Can we be able to do some protocols and development in that same period, or is that too much?
Well, I think the question is whether, well, okay, my bad. I didn't make this clear. I assume that for board development, it would have to be facilitated. And the protocol and policy workshop is not a facilitated workshop at this time. So that was a workshop that we were going to conduct amongst ourselves. So, yes.
Well, on June the 9th, it's data.
Yes.
And that might be the way to go with changing that out and putting something else in there.
And FSBA did offer to
Right.
substitute that. So, all right.
I said June 9th?
Yeah, June 9th, so that will not be using data, that will be board development. Okay. Second thing, I circulated a draft schedule of agendas through the August 24th workshop and noted that 4 items were not scheduled that we have discussed. One was revision to the superintendent administrative performance rating system that was supposed to come back for discussion by the board in April or May. That has not been scheduled. We have not discussed the Gallup student poll. We have not discussed the leadership survey, nor have we scheduled board advisory committee recommendations for the end of the school year. So my question is, are any of these things important to you, and how would you like to see them scheduled? Mrs. Dozier.
Well, the summer is coming upon us, and I would ask you to visit your listening skills tent and look at number 5, slow down. And that's something I think that oftentimes we forget to do. We think we're on a racehorse and we've got to get to the end of the race. And I think sometimes because we are trying to pack so much in that we are actually not doing our due diligence in taking care of the business that we need to do. So I don't want to push forward with anything else that we already have. I think our plates are absolutely full right now.
Well, I would agree. My question really was whether we wanted to take, whether any of these items had higher priority than something we had put in the agenda. That's all. So, if you all are not.
Could you send that to, let Keith disseminate what's currently in the agenda and the other ones so that we can actually get time to look at, like?
Well, yeah, I gave it out at the last meeting.
Oh, I know I got that one, but not what, is that the
Yeah.
ones that weren't on there?
Yeah,
Oh.
it was at the bottom.
Okay, I didn't catch that, okay. Yeah, that's the one we wrote on.
Right.
Okay.
But we can certainly send that out again.
Well, I have it, I scribbled it all over it, but I
Okay.
didn't catch that, it was for insertion.
And I
I'm
have
sorry,
a
Mary.
question. I actually have 2 questions. On the revision to the superintendent administrative performance assessment rating system, were we intending to look at that in April or May so that we could use it in June?
Yeah, as I recall the conversation, we were going to look at doing what Ms. La Riviere suggested, which was to take it to a 4-point system instead of a 3-point system for the next evaluation, which is why we had put it on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine, and I wasn't there when that got brought up. I heard it, but I wasn't there. Actually, the statutory code, our teachers use a 5-point code, 5 scale, and I think we should stick to the 5 scale because that's what's actually identified in Florida statute as a 5-point scale. So I think that we should use a 5-point scale. Mr. Martin can be a little more assistance of that as far as evaluations.
I'm not aware of a 5-point scale with respect to instructional personnel. That may be what is being used, but I'm not aware of any statutory dictate to that effect.
I'll show it to you.
4-point. Our teachers are out there saying it's a 4-point
Four-point?
scale.
Maybe it's statutory
It's a 4-point scale.
Mrs. LaRiviere.
I think Ms.
I'm sorry,
Fisher,
Ms.
I have
Fisher, you
another
weren't
question.
finished. Okay.
The other question I had, excuse me, was on June 9th, we were scheduled for a briefing, which I'm assuming, because there's no time here, that it would be 2. So if we're going to do board development,
Board development was scheduled at 9 a.m.
9
And
a.m.
then we had a 2 p.m. briefing in addition to that.
In fact, all 3 of those dates are all day.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. LaRiviere.
Okay. Just with, it is now, we're at the second week of May. I believe at this time we should keep that performance rating assessment system that we've had in place for this evaluation. There's no time to look at it or consider things, and Dr. Graham doesn't need to have that done. But it would behoove us, and this is for consideration and discussion. We need to have discussion about this at some point, is whether it would be good to have a couple of people look at our assessment. We need to have decide who the people would be who would be involved with that, and that would also include Dr. Graham or a designee that she would designate. You know, we need to have a little bit of board member, a little bit of Dr. Graham's staff, and then while I've created tons of pieces with this and have done a lot of professional development with developing rubrics and so on, I would rather have somebody on staff who would provide the guidance with developing an accurate rubric so we look at it properly.
Ms. Dozier.
Well, I love to give history lessons. I'll give you a little bit of history on this. This was actually developed by administrators. It was developed also by local quality groups, and they took extensive time in putting this evaluation tool together. And we were using it, and it has been very effective through 4 superintendents. And so I wanted you to have a history of how it was developed. I didn't want you to think that it was developed in a silo.
Thank you.
And so I thought that it was important that you have a little bit of a history.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin.
Just to provide you a reminder in terms of your planning, with respect to that evaluation form, it is adopted into policy, incorporated into a policy, so in order to change that, it would have to go through the policy adoption process.
Thank you.
And that would take a supermajority, correct?
To make a revision, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we consider that, I guess what I'm hearing is that we put a conversation about the superintendent administrative performance rating system on the agenda for the fall, tentatively, and we'll let it go at that. And everything else, we'll postpone. Okay, thank you. And, oh, gosh, I'm so, Mary, I missed you. I'm so sorry.
It's quite all right. I was hoping I'd
I
get
jumped
away
right
with
in
it.
there. Apologize.
I think that all I will say is a thank you. A thank you to our students for giving us a purpose. A thank you to their families for lending them to us and trusting us with them. A thank you to all of the people on staff who work very hard every day to do what's best for kids. And a thank you to our community who shows an interest and takes time out of their busy lives to share that interest with us. And a thank you to Marshall and his foundation crew, who are absolutely amazing, and I can't wait until the State of the Schools address. And a thank you to my colleagues and for all of the efforts that all of us will continue to make in becoming a good governance team. Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
No comments this evening, thank you.
Dr. Graham.
In response to Mr. Toiver's questions, the EOC is required by the state for those teachers who teach that subject to be part of their VAM. The exams we're not using for VAM are the CCEs, the Common Course exams. Having said all that, the Teacher Evaluation Committee is meeting next week to look at all of it together. We are still awaiting. I sent you one document today that we've gotten from the Commissioner's Office from DOE. We're waiting for more. There's not been an official technical assistance paper on all of 7069, so we're still waiting for more. But right now, the CCEs are the ones that we've removed and said anything the teacher wants to use, we will work for VAM. So that's the answer to that question. Mrs. Dozier, we have said nothing different than what the vote was. We are also waiting to see if the state makes any determination that's different than what they've said thus far. The word diagnostic was actually used because that was part of your vote. And we've done nothing yet with calculation because that won't happen until much later. The tests are still going on at this time. And we have encouraged teachers and principals to tell the students, regardless of calculation, they want to do their best, because even diagnostically, we want to know where they are, and they want to know where they are. So that's been the message that's been conveyed. And I made my other comments this afternoon, so it's an honor to lead this district.
Madam Chair, that statute is 1012.34, and it is a 4-point scale.
Okay, thank you.
I know I read it.
The next scheduled meeting of the board, there's a board workshop on May 26th at 9 a.m., also a board workshop at 2 p.m., immediately following a student hearing, and a school board action meeting at 6 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.